Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Life in Comedy. I'm your host, Will Beckton. This is a podcast about comedians, not just performers, but the kind of person that needs to make other people laugh, to the degree where a career in comedy seems kind of unavoidable. I would definitely put Madeleine Smithberg in that category. Madeleine is best known as co-creator and executive producer of The Daily Show, and hired people like Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, and Ed Helms. She was a producer on Late Night with David Letterman and has amazing stories. I always love talking to her. Here's that interview. I am here with Madeleine Smithberg.
Hi.
Very excited. Dear friend, going back to the New York days. We met in Woodstock, New York, at Josh Gilbert's house.
May he rest in peace.
Yes, may Josh rest in peace.
But may our memory and our friendship live on forever.
Yes, as Gilbert would have wanted it.
As he would have wanted it. I think I met you and I immediately thought, how do I hire this guy? That's the way my mind worked.
Well, I was very happy to have no idea what you did, which was executive producer of The Daily Show at the time that we met. We were just talking by a bonfire, and I always feel very lucky that because it was just like a natural friend meet.
It was a friend meet. You didn't have your resume on you.
No.
In those days, you would have had to actually have it as a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Which would have been really weird at a bonfire.
Yeah. That type of paper that had the little things that you tear off, like the printer paper.
Yeah. Now that would have been like awkward and weird. No, I was under the radar.
Yeah.
I was in private person mode.
Yeah. And I remember you were like, do you know any strong women performers at UCB? Yeah.
And you gave me Lauren Weedman.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you gave me Lauren Weedman. Do you know how close Lauren and I am?
No, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, because I'm living in Seattle now, and she has a huge Seattle connection, and so I go to see all of her one-woman shows when she comes to Seattle. Yeah. We go out to dinner, and we go out for cocktails, and I follow her, and she is one of the most unique, I'm going to call it a piece of talent. That's the producer in me. And now I am one of those.
Is that a thing?
I've become a piece of talent. Yeah, but...
is piece of talent an expression?
I think so.
Wow.
I don't think I just coined it. But no, she's so fucking nuts and so amazing and failed so horribly at The Daily Show.
Oh, God.
It was like watching just a person, light themselves on fire.
Oh, man.
And then she wrote about it in a book, and I went to a reading from her book and sat in the front row, and it was like one of my most uncomfortable experiences because I think she was talking right to me, and I was like,
oh my God,
Lauren, I feel your pain. Please don't share it with me so vividly.
Well, there's tons of famous people that weren't a good fit at Saturday Night Live or whatever, but you don't really hear about, but that must happen kind of everywhere.
It does. There's like the one seasoner people that go on, and Lauren was a train wreck.
I remember seeing a piece where she was in Mardi Gras, and I was like, this is just not
a good fit. But it was almost like it was too soon. She wasn't yet. And I also think that Jon just didn't get her.
Yeah.
And so there was this thing like that both Jon and, I worked for David Letterman on Late Night with David Letterman from 86 to 92. I call that my graduate school. And there's this thing where after the show, they need to decompress. I don't know if Conan was that way. I don't think so because he came up as a writer. And I know that Jimmy Kimmel is not that way.
Because
gotcha. I've gone to see Kimmel several times, and our kids both went to the Hollywood Schoolhouse, and he has come up to me coming out of the stage into the lobby and hugged me and go, how are you doing? How's your son? And I'm just like, wait, it's right after the show. Am I allowed to make eye contact? I'm so well trained. I'm darting my eyes down. But with Jon, he just literally came out, zipped into the green room, and I would have to sit there and, we would do kind of this debriefing, which is always great. And
did you guys call it a postmortem?
I think we did. Well? It was true because sometimes you felt like you were dying, but it was just, it was fine. It was just kind of he needed to be just left alone and deflate.
Yeah.
As if he was a giant blimp in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. And now the parade was over and it's time to just kind of fold Snoopy up and put him away. But Lauren had she wasn't reading the room. And she would just burst in and want to just talk about her performance.
Oh, man.
And it would be so deadly. And I would just be so uncomfortable. And yet this weird cocktail of uncomfortable and yet really amused.
Oh, man. Not in a Schadenfreude way, but just oh, my God, I can't believe this is happening.
I can't believe this is happening.
So before The Daily Show, you were at Letterman, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back. I did a semester abroad in Italy. My parents had taken me to Europe when I was 12, and it changed my life forever. It gave me a love of food, which will come in later, and did a semester abroad. I was an art history major. And when I got to New York, I got a job working for Italian national television, the office in New York. It was the Radiotelevisione Italiana. And it was
that's the RAI. That's what that
It's the world's worst acronym because it's really
I always want to say RAI.
RAI.
Yeah.
And it literally was this little miniature version of Italy. It was in the William Morris building on Avenue of the Americas. That's 6th Avenue and 53rd Street. And literally the elevator doors would open and you would smell espresso, wafting.
Okay. Yeah.
And because I spoke Italian, it was this joke. My friend Susanna, who was my connection to Italy, said, "Oh, Italian TV has an office in New York, RAI." And I sent my resume, and then literally the phone rang. It was our joke that we say about Chinese food. In New York, you order it, and then they ring the doorbell. Circling your house on a bike. And because they saw on my resume that I spoke Italian, but I was American, and they're like, "Get her in here."
Unicorn applicant.
It was just all the Italians were it was a nepotistic, it was a government television, so they would come in and use the free phone line, have 6 espressos, go to a 2-hour lunch, come back, take a nap at their desk, and then go home. Yeah, kind of just it wasn't about really working hard. And here I was, it was my second job out of school. I just wanted to work and I wanted to do well. And so they gave me jobs so far above my, level of expertise just because I was the only one that wanted to do them. And somewhere around there, I heard rumblings of this thing that was happening at 12:30 at night, which was Late Night with David Letterman. Now, keep in mind, DVRs really hadn't been invented. There was no internet. This was the Stone Age. And so one night I had to stay up really late and I watched Late Night with David Letterman, and I heard a sound effect that was operatic, and I thought, this is not an entertainment experience. This is a calling. I need to work for this show. I felt it in every fiber of my being. And so I called a friend and he connected me to this woman, Darcy Hetrich, that worked there. And she said, "Give up, Madeleine. You're never going to get a job." And RAI had a deal with NBC and I got myself tickets, and I went to see the taping and I was like a nervous wreck. And I looked on the floor and there was who would be my future boss, Robert Morton Morty. Shout out to Morty.
Yeah.
He was a segment producer at the time. And I said, I want to be him.
You were zeroed in on that role.
That was the job I wanted. I wanted to be him and I would get it. And at the time that I got that promotion, I thought I should have aimed a little higher. I want to be a mid-level employee.
I want to put out fires all day.
All day long. I want to take the blame and get none of the money. I want to be responsible for celebrities being vapid.
I don't know why she talked quietly.
So I try, I apply, it's not going to happen. And I take a job in 1986. It must have been early 1985, and it's for this crazy show called Domenica In, which means Sunday at Home, which is like an institution in Italy, and it's 6 hours live every Sunday.
Oh, I think I've seen. I studied in Florence, and this rings a bell. Yeah.
No, huge. At that time there were 4 channels in Italy, or 5, and we were 3 of them.
It was sort of like BBC-ish, right? It would just be like a number, it'd be like RAI 1, RAI 2.
RAI Uno, RAI 2,
CCC.
And one was a demo-Christian, one was socialist, and one was communist. And when the elevator doors opened and the news reporters would come out, you could tell by how how disheveled they were, which one they worked for.
It almost sounds like a joke setup.
It was a joke setup. The whole thing was a giant joke setup. The receptionist barely spoke English. She was from Naples, and she would go, "Recuperation, good afternoon."
So you got different accents
all
from,
different
from
accents,
north and the south.
and different levels of refinement. And the president wore a cape and a pinky ring.
Was Berlusconi ever around?
Berlusconi was the competition.
Oh, okay.
Berlusconi was the competition. No, we were RAI. So I'm out of the United States in New York, and there's 150 people working in Rome, and they're obsessed with America. So I'm traveling. I go to the Oscars, which was on a Monday then. So I'm doing live on Sunday. No one wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
I have footage.
Oh, you were there corresponding?
Yeah. Audrey Hepburn going, Domani. And all you can hear is they're hammering the bleachers outside of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. They sent me to the Custer battlefield for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Little Bighorn.
What the fuck?
It was a field.
Why was there Italian hunger for
I don't know. And somewhere along the line, I start sending what will be called later human interest, but they call it Americana. And I'm sending swimming babies, and they're building a pool in the studio. I sent Tony Robbins. I sent Uri Geller, and he fixed Federico Fellini's clock.
Oh.
I did celebrity interviews. Sylvester Stallone, very short man with a knife strapped to his ankle with elevator shoes. And Dustin Hoffman, who wanted a recipe for like tomato sauce. I would do satellites. I would interview celebrities.
Oh my
God.
God.
I was sending these swimming babies, a nun who raced miniature horses.
And when you say sending,
I was sending them to Rome.
Oh, okay.
And they would appear live in the studio.
Oh,
so I was booking, but then I sent this one guy that it was the Heart of Texas snake handlers, and he would get into a sleeping bag with 36 venomous rattlesnakes, and I had to figure out on TWA, which doesn't exist anymore, to ship them in the hold of the plane, and you had to have 2 levels of so
you had snakes on a plane.
I had snakes on a plane before. Way before.
Way ahead of your time.
I've always been ahead of my time. Anyway, somewhere along the line, I meet this architect at a Robert De Niro senior opening. The Robert De Niro is a whole other thing. I meet this really cute guy, and his name is Sam Packard. I fall instantly in love, and the next day he calls me, and we start seeing each other, but he's very clear. He says, I don't, like all men in my 20s always said to me as like the second thing out of their mouth, once they had fucked me, they would say, I really don't want to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I was like, you could have mentioned that like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
But cool. And he go, I just broke up with this woman named Fran. And then from the rest of our 9 months together, he would just always trash Fran. And it was just how great I was and how like awful this woman had been, whatever. So he doesn't want to get involved, but I don't listen. And I fall instantly, madly in love. And then the Challenger explodes, and everyone in America and every school child is watching. And Sam, who has a very dark sense of humor, which is part of the reason I loved him and love him, maybe, says, screw it, Madeleine. Let's go up in a blaze of glory like Krista McAuliffe.
Okay.
And we fall in love, and we start taking ballroom dancing lessons, and we're like, whatever. So then the Dominica Inn the season's coming to an end. They send me and Sam 2 business class tickets to go to Rome for the final show.
Oh my God.
A limo meets us at Fiumicino Airport in Rome. They put us up at the Rome Hilton. And then we go to the last show. We go to the party. And then the host of my show, Mino D'Amato, takes us and deposits us in his house on the Mediterranean. And Sam and I spend 5 days just like a honeymoon.
Ooh.
There's pictures of me like topless diving into the blue water and, whatever. So now my parents have bought this little place in 1984 for $12,000. And we did our own version of like Under the Tuscan Sun or A Year of Provence, and we renovated it. And my parents don't speak Italian yet. And I have to go to Siena to meet them to help them buy like a bidet and faucets. And
Siena's beautiful.
And that's our house was 20 minutes southwest. Remember, the phone call costs $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Or literally $1 million lira, which is like $1,000 per euro. There's no internet. So I'm just living in a trance, and I'm floating through the whole bidet faucet purchase experience. And then I go home still, just I'm going to see him. And I'm living in an apartment on Christopher Street. He's not at the airport, which is a little bit worrisome.
Yeah. Pre-cell phone, no way of
no cell
no
phones,
information.
No, my plane got diverted to Boston. We sat on the tarmac for 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
I finally get home. The apartment's being renovated. So on my bed, which is in kind of an empty space, is a yellow legal pad with my Susanna's mother, Minella's handwriting, but I don't read it. I just pick it up and I go directly to the phone, which to carbon date the story is attached to the wall.
Yeah.
I believe there were push buttons. I don't think it was
Not
a rotary,
okay.
but it could have been.
Could have been, yeah.
And for the story, we can make it one because it's more, a little bit more dramatic.
There's a lot of like 9s or 8s. It takes longer.
Right, because they're a bit higher numbers. Like, fuck. And I'm greeted by a pause. He's like, hello. And then there's this like pause that in my mind went on for like a century. And then he says the words, I'll never forget, which you never want to hear because they never are followed by anything you do want to hear. He says, we have to talk.
Uh-oh.
I'm back with Fran.
Ah.
In my mind, the phone goes down a spiral in slow motion. The room starts spinning around me. I think I can't stand. I'm going to vomit and probably pee. I don't know, but a lot of stuff is going to come out. And then for some reason, I look at the piece of paper in my right hand.
Yeah.
And on it is written, call Darcy about a job at Letterman.
Oh my God. At that moment.
Split second.
That is
split second.
Nuts.
Yeah. So I called it an emotional rainbow. It was like in one instant, my heart was broken and my dreams came true.
That is so
And I was
weird.
nowhere, Will.
I mean, obviously that kind of freed you up too to really attack that job.
Okay, so then I never processed the loss of Sam as I probably should have.
Well, then there's that, yeah.
I jumped in and I had to pitch 60 guest ideas.
What the
segment
fuck?
ideas. 2 different meetings. One I had 30 and I thought, that's great. And then I go, okay, want 30 more.
Wow.
There was no internet, so I got them all from my head and magazines.
Yeah, there was no like FARC at that point. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
And then I have the final meeting. Remember I think it's called Dave, where Annette Bening goes and she's meeting with the president, or I might be conflating my movies. They might have been an American president, but whatever. I'm at 30 Rock and there's the security at the base of the elevator bank. She's like, who are you here to see? And I'm like, David Letterman. She goes, yeah, who are you here to see? And I go, no, I'm here to see David Letterman. And she goes, you go, Madeleine Smithberg. And I go up and I start telling Dave these stories about working with Gina Lola Brigida as a correspondent on Jacques Cousteau's boat in stiletto heels. I could write a whole book just about Domenica and just about Italian TV because it was so adorable. But anyway, so I tell Dave these stories and then I run back to it's not very far, like 50th to 54th. And I get there and immediately my phone on my desk, because there are no cell phones, starts ringing. And it's the executive producer, Barry Sand. And he says, I don't know what you did in there, but you got the job.
Wow.
And I jumped up and down and I twisted my ankle.
It can never be one moment. It always has to be a combination.
There's a combination. Welcome to my life. I'm the yin, the yang, like call it whatever you want. I'm a fucking Libra. So anyway, I jump into my job at Late Night with David Letterman. And like I'm a researcher, I think, for like 3 months. And then somebody leaves and I get promoted and then I get promoted. And then somewhere along the line, I come up with an idea for a show and end up selling it. And in there, I'm doing all the cooking segments.
Yeah. So you're a segment producer for most of the
human interest booker, but without the internet.
And human interest means like
animals and humans, exotic chickens, border collies herding sheep, Kmart the magician, Jack Hanna from the Columbus Zoo, all the cooking demos, kid inventors, just anything where Dave was getting up off his feet. You know, the potato chip lady, she was in a Myrtle Young, Bev Tanner, the baking lady. Like, this was my peeps.
Yeah.
Guy that invented electrically heated clothing that burnt you and you had to be plugged into the wall, who came from England. I had a guy named Ted Borges, your feet are gorgeous, who was a podiatrist who collected celebrity shoes, but the biggest celebrity was Jamie Farr from MASH.
That was the zenith.
That was it. The others were just used shoes of people you...
Bud Courts, flip-flops.
Yeah, pretty much. Lame. But anyway, did all that. And then at a certain point, my really good friend Elise Roth, who I'm staying with in Santa Monica now, convinces me that I should leave and we should create a company to do fun programming or content, TV it was called then, about food.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that I had come up with this one idea and Dave's manager, Jack Rollins, was Woody Allen's manager, and he's in Broadway, Daniel's sweetest, most wonderful man in the world, but he always had a cigar in one hand and an egg salad sandwich in the other, and somewhere in there was a racing program. We would sit in talent meetings and we kind of had side bets on which was going to hit the floor first, the ashes or the egg salad.
Yeah.
So I come up with this show idea. Lisa helps me. My head writer is Randy Cohen, who invented the monkey cam and the top 10. And we developed the show and I pitch it to Dave. Dave comes on as executive producer. NBC passes, but suddenly Jack Rollins gets in the elevator with this man named Garth Ancier, who would be this kind of angel throughout my career several more times. And he's working for Barry Diller at Fox, and they're chit-chatting, and Garth says, hey, does Dave have any shows? And he goes, yeah, we've got this Offbeat America. Next thing I know, Elise and I are sitting at the Four Seasons by the fountain eating duck with cherries. So based on that, Will, like I go, oh my God, selling TV shows is so easy.
Oh, yeah.
You just come up with an idea, you write it up. Jack Rollins gets in an elevator with Garth Ancier, and next thing you know, you're eating duck with cherries at the Four Seasons.
That's just how things work,
That's
man.
how it works. And so the show ended up never getting made, but it gave me this false confidence that would ruin my life because I would try to sell TV shows for the next 30 years, and some of it was god-awful. And you, I think, were involved in some of that. I'm sorry. Yappy Broads. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to the Yappy Broads and Infomania, and all of it just one big giant heartbreak that never ended. But I had no clue at that time. I was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yeah.
Just completely wrong. But Elise convinces me, and I gracefully exit.
Yeah.
My last day is Johnny Carson's last day. I get eclipsed. He had a better publicist.
Oh, yeah.
I got a card at the end of the show. Good luck, Maddie.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one.
I know. Lisa and I start Half Baked Productions, and we shoot a pilot called Eating New York. My DP is a guy named Phil Abraham, who would go on to be the DP of The Sopranos and then the director of Mad Men, The Sopranos, a million things. Head writer was Kevin Kay, who would run Nickelodeon, and it was just like incredible. And we shoot this really great, ahead of its time, wonderful pilot called Eating New York. And there's a runner we get people to sing this Caesar salad song that they sing at this restaurant. And it was just great. And it looked beautiful. And it ends up on the desk of this woman named Eileen Cass, dear friend, running original programming at MTV. She's a foodie. So she has this huge stack of 3/4 inch, like if you go into her office, you don't see her because it's like just a wall of giant media.
Yeah, those are thick tapes.
They're big. Yeah. She takes it, and when you put them in the machine, they go like clunkety, clunkety, clunk, clunk, clunk. Boink. It's like some crazy, like Brazil.
Oh, when it descends.
Yeah, it descends. It moves in and down. And then there's a pause, and you hear like gears drifting. So she watches it, and she really likes it. And then inside the giant case is a paper information sheet, and on it are Elise's credits at SNL and Chiat and mine at Late Night with David Letterman. She goes, oh my God, I have a comedian in the basement, literally basement of MTV 1515 Broadway at Times Square. You've seen TRL, and we're doing a late night talk show with him. Let me call him up here. And up comes Jon Stewart.
Oh, wow.
And we essentially fall in comedic love. Like when you're, this is what I love about working in comedy, and I know you do too. I love working with people that are funnier than me, that make me funnier, and we all make each other funnier. And my favorite thing in the world is a pitch meeting. That's a brainstorming session. And I've always said, if I had wanted to work alone, I would have been a poet.
Yeah.
But comedy, and especially TV comedy or whatever we're calling it now, streaming, is such a collaborative, and that's, I don't do well alone. We've established that before we started recording, but I love that creative process. And that's why I'm writing this book, and it's called Almost Funny, My Life in Late Night Comedy, Cooking, and Cancer. Yeah, it gets bummery, but I find the funny in all of it. I'm building this like team of people that are like collaborating, and I just get on Zooms with them and brainstorm, and I like read it with them. I don't send it ahead of time. I don't want fucking notes. I just want to like
you can feel it. You can feel if something's landing in
and
there.
make it. And so anyway, we do the Jon Stewart show at MTV, and I get to be a showrunner for my first time. And Eileen says, you don't really have the experience because you've only been a segment producer, but I'm going to put you with a really strong line producer who's Lori Rich, who I just saw in July, who I love, and her husband, Charlie Huntley, was cameraman on the Jon Stewart show, and sometimes at the Daily Show. I get a Christmas card from him every single year. And just like great people. We do the Jon Stewart show. It gets picked up. It's probably the best time in my entire life because we're doing 4 shows a week, but we're taping them in 2 days at National Studios, and it's MTV in the, I guess, early 90s. Every show, we would have a band, and every Thursday, we would have a wrap party with open bar and food up the block at the West Bank Cafe. Like, those days do not exist.
Yeah. Different time,
Everything was going great. And then this merger happened between Paramount and Viacom.
Oh.
And we were Viacom.
Yeah.
And New York Magazine wrote a cover story about us and Jon and the show on MTV, and it was called The Man Who Should Be Conan. Because remember the whole late night wars and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Arsenio Hall, who's syndicated on Paramount, brought Louis Farrakhan on the show.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of didn't go over that well in Hollywood.
For some reason, that was not on my radar.
Yeah, it was a big turning point.
Move,
and so they know they want him out, and he's done.
Wow.
Someone has this New York Magazine on their desk, and they go, let's get this guy. He'll be the Jewish Arsenio. And next thing you know, we're getting syndicated, and it stops being fun. There are no more. We still have music on every show.
Yeah.
But it's 5 hours of television a week, and it's this 9-month, like, slow decline, and a lot of stuff happens, and the show goes under. But our director, Beth McCarthy, our head writer, Steve Higgins, a bunch of the writers go to Saturday Night Live. Higgins is now, like, right under Lorne at Saturday Night Live, and he's Jimmy Fallon's announcer, sidekick, and nicest man on planet Earth.
That's great to hear.
And Beth McCarthy, genius director. And then some of the writers go out to LA to disappear into sitcom land. I get recruited to produce a daily show for Comedy Central.
Yeah.
And I bring the rest with me. And
this was Doug Herzog years?
I get recruited by Doug Herzog and Eileen Katz, who have now moved over to Comedy Central. First, I'm offered head of original programming. I say no. Then they go, we want you to produce this daily show. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to get pregnant. I was in the whole like fertility, in vitro hell. I had a breast cancer scare then too, I'm remembering. But Liz Winston and I end up with Jonathan, my ex-husband, who you know very well.
Yeah.
One stoned night at midnight watching TV, we come up with this crazy idea for, what if you do like Larry Sanders, but it's about a whole network? So we called it The Network, and it was like the crappiest like cable network you could ever think of. And then you could do all their shows and make fun of all of media. So we pitch it to Eileen Katz at lunch. She takes us in a taxi. There's no Uber yet. Up to Doug's office. We pitch him the show, and he sets us up in a development deal at Comedy Central. But every time I go to use the bathroom or like drink water, he'll go, Madeleine, you should be doing this daily show for me. And I go, no. And finally, after about 6 months, he pushes me against the wall. But I always say that it was in a friendly, not a Me Too-ish way.
Yeah.
And he says, Madeleine Smithberg, what are you thinking? This is the job you were born to do. You're in there developing a show I can't afford to make. You're just here because Eileen wants you in the building.
Yeah.
You don't have to do a pilot. We'll give you a year on air.
Wow.
And it can be anything you want. And I go, okay. And I walk into the room where Elise Roth and Liz Winstead are. And I go, okay, take the cards for the network down. We're doing that daily show.
Wow.
So I do the daily show and I stay there, and somewhere in there I adopt my son, and then somewhere in there it stops being fun. But the 2000 election happens, and that's amazing. But I'll come back to that because I'm actually on a different thread now. So I leave the daily show and I move to LA. My marriage kind of ends and it's very sad, but Jonathan's a great guy and we're really good friends. And I love Jonathan too. It was just like it was just not a great situation in many ways. And I probably should have left the Daily Show after the 2000 election, but there's woulda, shoulda, coulda. And I've been on this ride twice, and when a show gets successful, it stops being fun. Like, it's so much more fun when you're just this ragtag bunch of scoundrels and you're playing and the stakes are low. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, we're a hit. Okay, we better do this well. And then that doesn't make you funnier. It just makes the environment horrible. And the show got better. But for me, I had created this really silly, fun, collaborative environment. And suddenly there's one person who's filtering it all through a single vision. And we had a ton of fun leading up to it. In The Greatest Millennium was our year-end show in 1999, where we really, we upped the silly. And 2000 election was a magical experience. And the days in there, like 34 days without a president, where the whole world was looking at us because the quote-unquote legitimate media, what were they going to go? We still don't have a president. We became literally the paper of record at that moment. It was so cool because I didn't yet know that it was going to ruin everything. At least that it was going to ruin my life. Like, I thought it was really fun. And we were so silly, and we just got sillier and sillier and sillier. And at one point I went to Italy for 10 days, came back, we still didn't have a president. Like, it went on
it's
and
hard
on.
Sometimes it's hard to remember how long that dragged on.
It was forever. And then, but for me, unfortunately, whoever said that, women can have it all does not know how to do math, because it's mathematically impossible to be a mom and have this huge, giant job where you're doing comedy every single day.
I remember, because I went to a couple tapings around that time. I remember just somewhere in that studio, I looked at the sign, The Daily Show, the logo, and I was like, Daily. Holy shit, they make this daily.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
It's like working in a bakery for comedy. There's at a certain point, and when you're playing and the stakes are low, that's awesome. But when suddenly stakes have risen, and you're really visible, and Jon was on the cover of Rolling Stone,
that's
and
right,
CNN was in our offices, and the stakes got higher, and the joy kind of left, which for me was sad, because what I really have decided about my life is, if I'm not having fun, I should leave. And that's maybe that's a title for my book. Because it's really my motto, and it's where I am right now, which I'm going to go back to. So I leave The Daily Show. I move to LA. My first marriage ends very badly. I behave poorly. I have a one-night stand with a guy 16 years younger than me. That lasts 13 years. Did you ever meet Keto?
I remember the Keto years. Yeah. The Lost Weekend.
Yeah, kind of. He called NPR the talking. I'm like, can you turn off the talking? I'm like, that's all things considered. We weren't in it for the intellect. Let's just say. And for a while it worked, and then it didn't. And when it didn't, it really didn't. But, whatever. So somewhere in there, Facebook gets invented. And Sam Packard, 3 weeks before my 50th birthday, reaches out and says, "Do you remember me?" To which I did the most dramatically enhanced eye roll of all times. Are you fucking kidding me?
Oh my God.
Do I remember you? I have a scar in my heart in the shape of your profile. What are you talking about? We start texting back and forth. I'm an architect. I'm divorced. I have 2 boys. I'm living in Seattle. For the next 7 years, we'll kind of come toward it and go away. Then both of my parents are disintegrating in their apartment in New York. I'm living in the house of my dreams in Coldwater Canyon. I have a barbecue every Sunday called Super Sunday. I've got the pool, the jacuzzi.
That was a great house.
So it was really good until it wasn't. And then, I don't know. It's right now I'm 64. And I felt when I turned 50 as a woman, I became invisible. And it was Hollywood just basically was yeah, you created The Daily Show. Great. But what have you done lately?
Yeah.
And suddenly there was this perfect storm of shit, I called it, that happened around 2007, 2008, when the writers went on strike, a different time, and the economy collapsed. Reality television came up.
Yeah.
And then it was like a bowling ball was dropped on the industry because the streamers started emerging. And suddenly agents who would, if I pitched an idea, they would set up 5 meetings. We'd go to 5 meetings and either I'd sell it or I wouldn't. And usually I would get a pilot, an actual pilot, with the budget.
Yeah, yeah.
And then came this thing that, like, you know how in Blazing Saddles, when they say Frau Brucher, there's like the thunderclap and horses neigh?
Yeah, Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein, Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Frau Brucher. It's called the proof of concept. And so this is like, we'll give you $20,000 to do a proof of concept for a show that's going to cost $600,000. And you're not going to make any money, but you're going to call in every favor. You're going to work like a million hours a day. And then we're going to pass, or the executive that hired you is going to leave, or we're going to turn into a crime network. There were just a million different reasons why none of them ever happened. And with Yappy Broads...
So was proof of concept, did that have a moment where that was actually like a thing you'd started hearing?
Oh, yeah. I had never heard it. It was pilots.
Because I came of age at a point where proof of concept was already sort of an accepted thing to hear.
Yeah,
I didn't realize...
and you know what? So was pedophilia. Like... I don't think that ever really was.
And Challenger jokes.
Challenger jokes. We got something for everyone. But I do want to go back to the Daily Show for a second. I feel like, as I'm getting older, I think about what is my legacy? What is my legacy? And I feel like, okay, I've got an Emmy, 2 Peabodys. I've created with Liz Winstead the Daily Show. I ran it for 7 years. I hired, the list of people that I hired. God. And I feel like I changed the way that college kids, receive their news. I got them interested in news and politics. I could theoretically go lay down, but unfortunately, although my name is on the show, I don't get back end. So I actually do have to still it would be nice to get some money. Not that I love it or anything, but enough to live on would be great. Like, fuck. But anyway, so, I moved my parents out to LA. My dad has Parkinson's, which he's kept at bay for probably like 40 years through diet and exercise, but at the age of 90 gets a UTI, who knew they were that bad, and goes into this downward spiral. My mother is unraveling in another direction. My brother puts us on a plane. I move them out, put them in assisted living half a mile from my house here in Studio City, Sunrise on Colbert Canyon. And my dad gets kicked out after 3 weeks for trying to masturbate during the afternoon movie, even though he was catheterized.
Oh.
So that must have been grisly to watch. And then took my mother's cane and started hitting old ladies.
Oh, God.
And they said, we can't handle him. So my dad is sent to this, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest place out in Calabasas. My mom is trying to escape every night, like packing her bags and telling them to call her a cab and calling her friends in Vermont and saying, pick me up at the train. And the friend's calling me like, I'm going to pick Lorraine up at the Amtrak station in Brattleboro. And I'm like, no! And suddenly I got a property tax bill for $14,000.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm just like, tap, tap, sold my dream house in the canyon.
Yeah.
And ended up moving to a really cool house in Sherman Oaks that had been a director for Laurel and Hardy, and everything was fine. And then my goddamn landlady decided she didn't like living in rural Oregon and wanted to come back. So I took Harry to college, and then I really didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, I get this phone call, and it's my manager, Rick Dorfman. Shout out to Rick Dorfman. And he says, National Geographic is rebooting as a studio show, and they're launching in about 3 weeks, and no one really knows how to do that. And they want you to come to New York to consult. And they paid me $5,000 and flew me business class. And I went back to New York for 3 days. They didn't even have a board. If anyone who's ever worked in television knows that, their TV shows are built on 3x5 index cards.
Yeah. With the tape grid.
The tape grid out of masking tape and push pins. It's not high tech, people. I become the head writer back to the WGA, thank you, pension, and executive producer of National Geographic. And I'm staying back on Christopher Street in my friend Susanna's mother, Minella's house. And Sam Packard comes to see me twice. And on the second time, he gets really sick and I take care of him. And he looks at me and he says, you're the best there ever was. When your show is over, will you move to Seattle? And I said, yes. and I probably should have checked the weather. So
Ah.
April 1st would have been my 7-year anniversary of living in Seattle. In the beginning, I tried to straddle development and TV, and I was commuting to New York and LA, and I had a pilot in New York. I had a pilot with with this woman named Carrie Keegan, and I had been hired to develop a parody of Fox News for Channel 4 in England.
Oh, that's right.
And it was so amazing. But then literally within like 2 days, like bubbles, they all burst and disappeared, and suddenly I had nothing. And then Sam, my first Christmas, gave me a gift certificate for a cooking class. I took knife skills, which everyone says Sam was very brave to have allowed.
Yeah.
And I go to this knife skills class, and I get recruited to be a chef, to work at a place called Blue Ribbon Cooking, teaching corporate team building events for the techie, the Facebooks and the Microsofts of like the lovely world that is on the spectrum, Seattle. And, it's Norwegian and tech. Where the black people be? Like, I'm just like, this place not for me. They go out, they talk about the Seattle freeze. Anyway, it's a beautiful place for 2 months in the summer. So anyway, I pivot at the age of 60. And I get Chef Madeleine embroidered in thread on my chef coats. I have chef coats. I go from the arguably top of one industry to the bottom of another. Sam proposes, and we're planning our wedding on a beach in Mexico. After 34 years, we're getting married on a beach on the Sea of Cortez, and I have rhinestone flip-flops and a dress. And I turned 61 in September of 2019, and I say out loud, not really, it's in my head, but I go, Madeleine Smithberg, look at you. You're turning 61. You've pivoted to a new career you love. You followed a passion. You're marrying the love of your life on a beach in Mexico. What could go wrong, Will? COVID. We had the first death 7 miles from my house in Kirkland, Washington. Blue Ribbon closed in February.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And my wedding was supposed to be March 21st. Yep. And that just started unraveling. And finally, on March 14th, we ran to an empty courthouse in Bellevue with Sam's sons, Ben and Noah, and Harry was on a phone in Chico. And my friends, Chris and her husband, Steve, came dressed in the clothes they were going to wear on the beach.
That's nice.
Next day, the restaurants closed, the courthouse is closed, and we went into lockdown in a house with one bathroom in a place where it rains 8 months of the year and gets dark at 4 for 6 of those, with a guy with big feet and a lot of shoes, and it was brutal.
The cabin fever aspect of that.
Yeah, no, it's awful. Like, at least here in California, you could be outside.
Yeah.
And one day, I don't know what happened, but it was almost like an out of body. Like I was a puppet and someone was pulling my strings. I got up off the couch. I didn't put on makeup. I didn't brush my hair. I didn't clean. I had dirty dishes in the sink. But I said, Sam, come into the kitchen. I'm going to make pasta. Here's my phone. You're going to shoot it and we're going to put it on YouTube.
Oh.
And that's how Mad in the Kitchen was born.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I started a YouTube channel, and Will, it took off. It was like this magical thing where everybody needed it. And not only did people need to watch it, but they wanted to be a part of it. So this man that I had met twice wanted to edit. He came on and edited. And then he wanted to shoot. And then this wonderful woman who just graduated from film school was back in her bedroom from high school. And
I never thought about that. It's almost like you send out the bat signal or whatever.
Everybody came toward me and wanted to help. And I had a publicist, Linda Schaffron, working for me. My friend Barbara Fluke booked me on the Today Show. Next thing I know, Sky Gleason, who was my business partner in Mad in the Kitchen, is on this thing called Office Hours. 3,000, I think, tech people all over the world get together 7 days a week for 3 hours and talk about the future of broadcasting, both from a hardware and software perspective. So they had all these toys, and I was the content. And so the boxes would arrive and robotic cameras would come. I had a $1,200 mic. Next thing you know, my kitchen, which isn't that great or big, is a working television studio with 5 cameras. This man, Jim Hengens, built me a production truck in the cloud. I had a switcher. I had prompter. At one point, we did 8 weeks of live shows, connecting with people all over the world. I was doing my own remote corporate team building events. I did 3 for Amazon. I was making $7,000 in a day. Al Roker's company came on, helped me with my social media. Marisa produced it. We were doing amazing short form, madinthekitchen.com. Go check it out. Produced so much content in my house. And I had been booked by Linda Shaffron to do a segment on a show out of Memphis. It would have been like February 15th, 2022. They asked me if I can be a regular and come back every Thursday. And I say yes. Later that day, I go to get a routine mammogram and I get diagnosed with breast cancer. And I end up having surgery, 6 months of chemo, a lot of radiation, and at the end, it was 5 days a week. It was the worst thing I've ever been through, and Mad in the Kitchen just came to a crashing halt. It was like when the plate spinner, like, loses control, and the plates just come crashing down.
God, once again, 2 big things happening on top of each other.
Yeah, that seems to be my signature move.
Like your thing. Yeah.
Can we stop it now?
Just one thing. How about one thing?
I just want the good thing.
Yeah.
I just want the good thing. I don't want the bad thing. Like, what the hell?
Man.
I don't want the bad anymore. I just want the good. I'm too old for this stuff. I have to cold turkey the bioidentical hormones that I've been on for, like 14 years. My hair's falling out. I'm not sleeping for every time I get an infusion in the port in my chest. I don't sleep or poop for 5 days.
Oh my God.
And
that's literally torture.
It was horrible. I also am going through this kind of microwaved, super intense version of menopause.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, I'm getting wrinkles. I now have stenosis of the spine. Every joint, every bone. My skin is like crepe paper.
Oh, God.
When vaginal dryness becomes a focus of your life, things are not going well.
Yeah.
Those are 2 words that I never wanted to ever put in content.
That's not like chocolate and peanut butter.
No,
that's not
it's
a
the
good
anti-chocolate and peanut butter. It's the whatever is it called? The opposite, what is it in math? You call it the something opposite. Okay, so here's my joke. Because of this, I have 3 kinds of fog. I have chemo fog, I have menopause fog, and shit. I finished my treatment, and then came 2023. And when you leave treatment, it's supposedly like, yay, I'm done. 2023, I don't know about you. I know every person I know had the worst year of their...
Yeah. It seems like
pretty much
unanimous.
Across the board.
Yeah.
It's one thing we all agree on is that you're
And everybody kind of did it
in their own way.
Yeah. 2023, everybody kind of had their own quiet hell. And then later on, where it's like, that sucked, right? And everybody's like, it
totally sucked.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where we are. So now I'm like writing this book and I'm looking back at all of it. And the book is going to take place in the present as I figure out what act like 7 is for me and what I'm going to do and what I do know. And the only thing I know is it has to be fun.
Yeah.
And it has to be silly. And I have to do it with other people.
Yeah.
I just am done with this up and down and up and down. Like the downs are so horrible. So I'm trying to come up with my version of faith.
And not being over-reliant on forces you have no control over. So the thing I wanted to ask you about is you, I think, are one of the top finders and nurturers of talent that I can
probably
think
has
of.
ever lived.
Yeah.
Me and Lorne.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot more money and a lot more visibility. But no, I have a gut.
Yeah. And that's the thing I wanted to talk to you about is because we conversationally have talked about this, but you believe in a more of a kind of an instinctual, that's a talented person.
Boom, bring
let's
him
find
in.
a place for him, rather than being like, here's a hole, let's find somebody to fit this hole.
I totally, I think you're looking for the Colbert, Carell story. The Daily Show at that point this is Kilborn days.
Yeah.
Just so much fun. And like, if you ask Doug Herzog what his favorite time of his career is, he will, without missing a beat, say first year of The Daily Show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we had a year, so there was not this pressure. It was like the inverse opposite.
Yes, there you go.
The proof of concept. give myself that high five. Don't leave me hanging, man. So I knew where I was in the food chain, and I knew that I couldn't have exclusivity, and I knew that I couldn't pay very much. But what I knew was I could play. And if I didn't care about locking people into exclusive deals, people would come work with me when they weren't on other projects. Like, I was fine with it. I was like that girl in the bar at 3 a.m. that has no expectations.
Yeah.
And I just knew that's a horribly sexist metaphor, sorry. I think I'm allowed to do it.
I think you got to pass.
I was her. So there was a young agent, junior agent at William Morris named Mike August. He may still be at Kimmel for all I know. He ended up booking all the comics for Jimmy. But anyway, he was a great guy. I had this weird superpower that he always knew when there was going to be free food.
Oh, that's hilarious.
You couldn't believe it. Like, someone would bring like a tray of cookies and suddenly Mike August would appear out of like, out of a door you didn't even know was there, and just like
come out of a dumbwaiter.
Yeah, pretty much. But he was a really nice guy. And so he said, hey, I think I have a correspondent for you. And I'm like, sure, send me the tape. So he sends over, it's a 3/4 inch.
Yeah.
And I pop this tape in, and it's a bunch of Stephen Colbert comedy segments, mostly from the short-lived Dana Carvey show, which I was asked to work on. And
well, that had an amazing staff. Yeah.
I was asked to be sort of the eyes of Brillstein Gray, and I had drinks with Brad Gray at the Algonquin in that fabulous Bemelman bar where the Madeleine drawings are.
Oh, wow.
And he said, you should do this. And I finally called back my contact and said, I don't really want to do it. I want to stay at the Daily Show. And his answer was, have her call me when she wants to be in show business. Zinger. But anyway, so I don't take the job, and it only stays on for like 3 months. It just didn't work. Sketch in primetime is just like a really dicey thing, and it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, so I pop into the thing, and I'm blown away, like on the floor, can't stop laughing by this one sketch, and it's called Waiters Who Are Nauseated by Food. The premise is, and it's Stephen Colbert, and he has a napkin over his arm. He's wearing like a vest and a white shirt, and he's going, and our specials are sauteed mushrooms and a rosemary cream. And he can't get it out. And I call my Gargus, and I'm like, yeah, when can he start? So Colbert comes in, and immediately every single person on my staff falls in love with him. He's the nicest guy you ever want to meet.
Yeah.
And he's also the most talented.
Yeah.
Like, it just never, ever, ever stops. It's just this fountain of genius, gangbusters. But the weird part is, Will, I didn't even need network approval.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine now? Like, just, I'll hire that guy. Like, he would have to go through a committee of 18 people all shivering in fear of losing their jobs who would say no, and like, which is what would happen on these stupid proof of concepts. I'm like, wait, you're giving me no money and you're giving me all this.
Who cares? Is this proof of concept?
Let me go.
Let
me do what I friggin' do, you morons. Not that I have an axe to grind. So, like 6 weeks later, I call Mike August thinking I'm about to have the stupidest conversation that I've ever had. And I go, Mike, I gotta put a disclaimer on this. This is the most imbecilic thing that I've ever asked anybody. But do you have another one? He's amazing. And Mike August goes, yeah, I do. You know that sketch you like so much about waiters who are nauseated by food, which isn't me because I love it and I know when it's free. Go back and look at it because it's his writing partner and improv partner, Steve Carell. So I go back and I watch the tape, and sure enough, there's another guy I hadn't even noticed, and he's barfing, dry heaving in the background. And
it's almost like the Zapruder thing. You're like, wait, there's more.
There's more. Right, exactly. Frame by frame by frame. Circle it. Yes, it's a Zapruder film of comedy. And so Steve Carell comes in, and now my field department, because I hired them for the field, which was my little place.
Yeah.
Like, that was my happy place.
And Stuart Bailey was a part
Stu
of that.
Bailey
Yeah, he's great.
was running it, and Kiara Edmonds, and Allison Watson Camille, and Kahani Korn, Eric Tiley, Jeff Salmon, like just the cutest little babies and funniest, and adorable. And anyway, they all become dicks. And Carell has done like 3 segments, and my bitchy producers are, he's not another Colbert. he's just not that good. He doesn't get it. He's just not that funny. And I'm like, give him a chance. Like,
yeah.
lightning in a bottle of a Colbert happens never.
Yeah.
And it happened once.
And you're expecting it
like
consecutive hires.
We know the guy is funny. He just hasn't quite clicked into the game. And so I send him out with Stuart Bailey because Stuart's my, ace, funniest, nicest, greatest guy I've ever known.
I've never worked with him, but I imagine good bedside manner as far as
unbelievably gentle, but hilarious laugh. Like when he laughs, his eyes wrinkle, and just couldn't love a human being probably more than Stu Bailey. So I send him out. We're doing some story that for some reason out here in Los Angeles. We send them to LA, and George Takei from Star Trek is involved in this for some reason.
Yeah.
So, the whole brainstorm of The Daily Show, like that aha moment was we realized that if we're making fun of the media, the secret was to pretend we're them. So we realized that the more serious we were, the more earnest, the more our brows were furrowed, the more we made it about us, the more we did unnecessary things like walking and talking at the same time.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, George Takei keeps disappearing and Stuart, the light is fading. It's like past golden hour. They need to get like this final piece of whatever, and then they have to shoot his intro, which is the walk and talk, Steve Carell's intro. Stuart said there's a bush and there's like liquid coming out, and he finds George Takei comes out and he's zipping up his pants, and he's like, I'm a hydrator. So he kept disappearing to pee. So now it's time. Stuart shoots the walk and talk for me, and it's Steve Carell, and we have these giant mic cubes. They're like exaggeratedly large.
Yeah.
And he's holding the mic cube and his eyes are fixed on the camera super seriously. Stuart places him up about, let's say like 30 feet up on a really steep hill in Griffith Park and says, okay, camera's down at the bottom. Walk toward me while reading the copy. And Carell holds the mic. His eyes are fixed on the camera, but he's coming down this hill.
Oh, no.
And his lower body is just going crazy. His legs are like weaving all over the place. He keeps almost falling, but he never takes his eyes off the camera and never smiles. And I made Stuart Bailey show me the raw footage in an edit bay 7 times. And 7 times I laughed till I cried. And I left that edit bay and I called his manager and I hired that guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, almost like the Irish dancing thing where like their legs are like, but their legs kind of still up.
Yes, it's exactly like that, except with the mic cube and a trench coat.
Oh my God.
And like false importance.
When you're burning light.
But is there any last thing you want to,
no.
There's so much.
Well, just
Yappy Broads.
An Adult Swim pilot.
Yes, it was.
And in the period of when you were just in your pilot proof of concept hell.
Frau Brucha.
So I got a call and you were like, Will, do you want to edit this Adult Swim pilot? It's called Yappy Broads.
Right.
It's a live action thing of men in drag. It's for Adult Swim.
Pretending they were The View.
Yeah, The View. Yeah.
The View. And we hired, it was 4 comedians in drag. And then we put a Miss USA, Shandy Finnessy, in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You came on ostensibly as an editor and then just started bringing in, like every single person that you brought in is now a gigantic star.
I'd known a lot of UCB people. So like Brett Gelman, like Nick Kroll.
Nick Kroll came in.
Brian Husky came in. And then I actually asked Gelman, I was like, Gelman, do you know like a strong female currently at UCB? And he said, Natasha Leggero. She came in. But then the people you guys brought in that I was really happy to know about, Dana Gould I was aware of. But holy shit, what a genius. And then Rob Delaney. That was insane.
Rob Delaney, I tried to put in everything.
I just could not. I was like, who the fuck is this guy?
Did Ron Lynch come to us? Yeah.
Ron Lynch
literally people that just blew you away.
Insane clown car people.
Remember I made them do like decorating cupcakes for the audition?
Yeah.
Like we decorated cupcakes.
But that was just I'll always cherish that casting process because I was like, I don't know if I'll ever just have that many funny people
just
brought
flying
into
through.
a room. But the funny thing about that whole process, because we saw, I don't know how, but we had a really good final group, sent that.
And they went with the people they always had wanted
They
from the
just
beginning.
inserted Adult Swim people.
Yeah.
But two of those people were Dino Stamatopoulos and Tommy Blacha.
Hello.
And so I was like, holy shit, I get to
And then
watch
we had
these guys work.
Earthquake.
Yeah, Earthquake.
And at first, I brought in all this wardrobe.
Yeah.
I was watching it last night, and Tommy Blacha is wearing my jacket.
Oh,
It was like a
that's
mock
hilarious.
Chanel. And then Earthquake didn't want her dress, but for some reason, he would wear like a frilly top, and Dino was wearing a caftan. And they all had wigs. And we bring in the facer size. I brought in real guests
Yeah.
that I would have booked on Letterman. So we
Yeah.
had a woman that danced with her dogs.
Okay, so real quick. So, it's hard to think of two more legendary Conan writers than Dino Stamatopoulos and Tommy Blacha. But one of my favorite moments of that whole experience was Carell, the face-your-size person, during their segment. Dino just goes, Carell, do you have any cats?
He just has one.
Yeah. And he's like,
He goes, Carell, how many cats do you have? Because I just saw it yesterday. She goes, 1. Why?
And he goes, oh, yeah? I pictured you with like 80.
80. Oh, well, it was so great. And so then they tortured us. This was like a slow torture.
Yeah.
Because they made Sarah North do for fucking Yappy Broads on Adult Swim, like, I want to say 8, but I'll say 80 just because it's funnier, like Dino, versions of that budget. What if we tape every week? What if we tape 2 a week? What if we do all the shows in 5 minutes? What if we do it 15 minutes? And then finally they said to us, okay, do us a favor. Just change the mileage reimbursement rate for the production assistants. Take it down 5 cents a mile and we'll get going. And we never heard from them again.
Wow.
And that is why, people, you should never go into show business.
Well, I remember the first day I started on Yappy Broads, you're giving
me PTSD.
Well, I know.
Like, what the fuck?
The first day.
Thanks for this.
So the production office, the Mad Cow production office is basically your house.
My house.
Yeah, your house. And I walk in my first day, you just found out a pilot wasn't picked up.
Ooh.
And you were crying and had a box of tissues. And you're like, well, welcome aboard. It's so great to see you. This is just how things are.
Nothing has changed. Well, thanks. Nothing has changed. This is just how things are. Get me some tissues. Oh my God. This is just how things are. That's a good book title.
Yeah.
This is just how things are. It's been a roller coaster, and I guess will continue to be, is what I'm learning. And
probably.
I just think that's
realistically.
I think that's life. But I think that my message, and I mean this as much for myself as for anyone listening, or for the target demo for my book and whatever, any content that I produce from here on in, I want to be me on camera and targeted at women, and mostly women. Either perimenopause is okay. That's a fucking bunch of bullshit, or post. And that's just like where it is. Because I feel like we're thrown away by society, but we're like this like untapped natural resource.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of us.
Yeah.
And we're eyeballs. And we may not be the demo, but we are a demo, and we're coming to get you.
All right. Love you, Madeleine.
Thank you
so much for doing
this.
this.
That was so much fun.
Thank you, Madeleine Smithberg. I loved hearing that Steve Carell story. And I was also reminded of the one conversation I had with Stephen Colbert at the final wrap party for Strangers with Candy. I asked him if he had any advice for someone just starting out in comedy. He said, stick around, do the work, and sooner or later you'll become indispensable. A few years later, I told that story to my friend Nick McKinney, and Nick said, yeah, he forgot to mention the part about being absurdly talented. Oh, and the Office Hours online community Madeleine was referring to can be found at www.officehours.global. That Office Hours is not to be confused with the Tim Heidecker Office Hours. I think they're probably quite different. I feel very lucky to call Madeleine Smithberg a friend. and I'm looking forward to seeing what she does next. Life and Comedy is recorded at Jett Road Studios. Please rate and review and follow the show on Instagram and YouTube. Thank you for listening.